Chosen one. Pause for a moment and listen closely. This is not a random video crossing your screen. If you're here right now, something has already shifted behind the scenes. While you were focused on surviving, on holding yourself together, powerful eyes were quietly watching your rise. People with influence, resources, and reach, people who usually never look twice, have started asking questions about you. And what shocked them most is not where you came from, but how you kept moving forward when everything was stacked against you. You didn't announce your growth. You didn't chase attention. Yet somehow, your name reached rooms you were never invited into. That's when curiosity turned into urgency. You may feel it already. Subtle calls that don't make sense, sudden interest, doors cracking open without explanation. This isn't luck. This is alignment. The same season that tested your patience is now exposing your value. And the reason this moment feels heavy is because what's approaching carries weight, responsibility, visibility, and a level of access you've never had before. Some will be inspired by you, others will be unsettled. But either way, your life is about to change direction. So don't rush past this message. Stay with me until the end, because once you understand why they're reaching out and what it means for you, there's no going back to who you were before. Before we go any further, like the video, comment, "Thank you God for choosing me," and subscribe to the channel to lock in this moment. Your silence made you visible. When you chose silence, you didn't do it to look mysterious or superior. You did it because talking too much was draining you. Explaining yourself was exhausting. At some point, you realized that not everyone deserves access to your thoughts, your plans, or your emotions. So you pulled back, not out of fear, but out of focus. While others were busy announcing their moves, posting every step, and asking for approval, you were quietly doing the work. And that choice changed everything. Most people believe visibility comes from noise. They think if they don't speak up constantly, they'll be forgotten. You proved the opposite. You showed that consistency speaks louder than words. You kept showing up for yourself even when no one was watching. No applause, no encouragement. Just you, your discipline, and your inner commitment. That kind of energy doesn't disappear. It concentrates. And concentrated energy attracts attention naturally. Your silence confused people at first. Some thought you had nothing going on. Others assumed you had given up. A few even underestimated you. But what they didn't see was how much strength it took to keep going without external motivation. You weren't quiet because you were unsure. You were quiet because you were building something real. And real things don't need constant announcements. There's a difference between being quiet and being invisible. You weren't hiding. You were preparing. While others were busy explaining their struggles, you were learning from yours. While others were reacting emotionally, you were observing. That observation sharpened your instincts. You began to move smarter, not faster. And people who operate at a high level recognize that pattern instantly. Powerful individuals don't trust loud promises. They trust patterns. They look for people who can work without supervision, stay disciplined without pressure, and remain focused without praise. Your silence showed all of that. It signaled emotional maturity. It showed that you don't fall apart when attention disappears. That's rare, and rarity always draws interest. Another thing your silence did, it protected you. By not speaking too soon, you avoided unnecessary opinions, distractions, and negative energy. You gave yourself space to think clearly, to make decisions without outside noise. That clarity started reflecting in the way you carried yourself. You didn't rush conversations. You didn't over-explain. You spoke only when it mattered, and when you did, people listened. What made you visible wasn't just silence, it was progress. Quiet progress. Results that couldn't be argued with. Growth that didn't need defending. Over time, people started noticing the gap between who you were before and who you were becoming. And the fact that this change happened without drama made it even more powerful. You solved problems instead of complaining. While many people spent their time pointing out what was wrong, you chose a different lane. You noticed the same problems they did: the delays, the unfair treatment, the lack of support. But instead of letting frustration control you, you asked a simple question. What can I do about this right now? That shift alone separated you from the crowd. Complaining gives temporary relief. Solving problems builds momentum. You instinctively chose momentum. You didn't deny reality or pretend things were easy. You just refused to sit still waiting for conditions to improve. When resources were limited, you became creative. When guidance was missing, you taught yourself. When the path wasn't clear, you experimented until something worked. Every obstacle became a lesson instead of a reason to stop. That approach quietly trained your mind to think in systems, not emotions. Most people freeze when the plan breaks. You adjusted. Plans changed, timelines stretched, support disappeared, but you stayed flexible. You learned faster because you were learning for survival, not for comfort. Each mistake sharpened you instead of embarrassing you. You didn't waste energy blaming circumstances. You redirected it into improvement. That kind of adaptability is something textbooks can't teach. What really set you apart was how calmly you handled pressure. When things went wrong, you didn't panic or dramatize the situation. You looked for the next move. While others replayed the problem again and again, you focused on the exit. That mindset creates reliability, and reliability is what decision-makers look for when stakes are high. You also learned to work with what you had instead of waiting for what you wanted. You didn't say, "I'll start when I have more time, more money, more support." You started where you were. You used imperfect tools, partial knowledge, and limited access, and still made progress. That told a powerful story. If you could move forward under pressure, you'd be unstoppable with proper resources. Over time, this behavior created a reputation you didn't even know was forming. People began to notice that when something needed fixing, you didn't add to the noise. You added clarity. You became someone who could be trusted in uncertainty. Not because you had all the answers, but because you didn't shut down when answers weren't obvious. High-level thinkers think this way. They don't romanticize struggle, but they don't run from it either. They respect people who stay solution-focused when emotions run high. That's why your name started coming up in serious conversations, rooms where complaints are seen as liabilities and problem solvers are seen as assets. You didn't rise by talking about obstacles. You rose by moving through them. And that quiet habit changed how the world started seeing you. You stayed consistent during uncertainty. Staying consistent when life is smooth is easy. Anyone can feel motivated when results show up quickly and the path feels safe. What made you different is that you kept going when nothing was guaranteed. There were moments when you didn't know if your effort would pay off, when the future felt blurry, and when quitting would have been the logical choice. Still, you showed up, not because you were fearless, but because you were committed. You learned how to move without constant reassurance. No clear signs, No promises that things would work out. Just a quiet decision you made with yourself. I will continue, even if I don't see the outcome yet. That kind of discipline doesn't come from confidence. It creates confidence. Each time you acted despite uncertainty, you trained your mind to trust your own process instead of outside validation. There were days when progress felt invisible, no feedback, no recognition. Sometimes even doubt whispered that you were wasting time. But instead of reacting emotionally, you stuck to your routine. You focused on what you could control: your effort, your learning, your attitude. That consistency became your anchor. It kept you stable while everything around you felt unpredictable. Most people wait for clarity before taking action. You did the opposite. You acted first and allowed clarity to catch up. That's not recklessness, that's leadership. Leaders don't wait for perfect information. They make thoughtful decisions with incomplete data and adjust along the way. You developed that skill naturally, simply by refusing to stop when the road got foggy. You also learned to sit with discomfort. Uncertainty brings anxiety, self-doubt, and second-guessing. Instead of running from those feelings, you learned to work alongside them. You didn't need constant motivation to keep moving. You relied on habits, not moods, and habits carry people much further than bursts of inspiration ever will. What people at the top recognize is this: consistency under pressure reveals character. Anyone can perform when things are predictable. Very few can stay reliable when outcomes are uncertain. You proved that you can be trusted even when conditions are unstable. That's why your effort didn't go unnoticed, even when it felt unseen. Your steadiness sent a silent message. You're not dependent on comfort to function. You don't collapse when the future isn't clear. You move anyway. And that ability separates those who lead from those who wait. You didn't need guarantees to keep going. You became the guarantee yourself. You didn't chase money. You built value. You understood something early that many people take years to realize. Chasing money directly often leads to frustration, shortcuts, and burnout. Instead of running after quick rewards, you chose to invest in yourself. You spent time learning skills that actually matter, improving the way you think, and understanding how things work behind the scenes. While others were asking, "How fast can I get paid?" you were asking, "How can I become more useful?" That difference shaped your path. You didn't ignore money. You just didn't let it control your decisions. You knew that fast wins don't always last, and easy money usually comes with hidden costs. So you stayed patient. You allowed yourself to be a beginner. You made mistakes, learned from them, and slowly built competence. Each step added to your value, even when it didn't add to your bank account right away. What surprised people wasn't that you were ambitious, it was that you weren't desperate. You didn't jump at every opportunity just because it promised money. You evaluated whether it aligned with your growth. You understood that skills compound, knowledge compounds, and reputation compounds. Money shows up when those things mature. That mindset is rare, especially in a world that celebrates instant results. While others rushed to monetize before they were ready, you focused on mastering your craft. You paid attention to details others skipped. You learned how to solve real problems, not just sell ideas. Over time, this made you reliable. People could trust the quality of what you brought to the table. And trust is what turns effort into opportunity. You also learned to delay gratification. That's not easy. Watching others move faster or show off early success can create pressure, but you resisted the urge to compare. You knew that different races have different finish lines. You stayed focused on building something solid instead of something flashy. That quiet discipline protected you from burnout and regret. Another thing you did differently, you understood that value isn't just technical skill. It's attitude, consistency, and how you show up when things get tough. You worked on communication. You learned to listen. You became someone people wanted to work with, not just someone who wanted to get paid. That human side of value matters more than most people realize. It came because you became someone worth investing in. You played the long game with intention, and now the results are catching up. What looked like slow progress was actually deep preparation, and that's why it's lasting. Your integrity stayed intact under pressure. There were moments when doing the right thing felt heavier than doing the easy thing. Shortcuts showed up. Offers came wrapped in convenience, promising faster results if you were willing to bend a little. No one was watching. No one would have known. And that's exactly where the real test was. You had the option to compromise, but something in you refused to cross that line. Integrity isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It shows up in private decisions, when the reward is tempting and the consequences seem distant. You chose the harder route, not because it felt good, but because it felt right. You understood that winning the wrong way eventually costs more than losing the right way. That awareness protected you when it mattered most. There were times when staying honest slowed you down. Others moved ahead faster, took credit quickly, or benefited from cutting corners. You saw it. You felt the frustration. But you didn't let bitterness change your standards. You stayed consistent with who you are, even when it felt unfair. That kind of self-respect builds inner strength that no shortcut can replace. What you didn't realize then was that people notice patterns, even when they don't say anything. They notice who stays clean under pressure and who folds when things get uncomfortable. Integrity builds a quiet reputation. Over time, your name became associated with reliability. When trust is rare, the person who protects it becomes valuable. High-level spaces run on trust more than talent. Skills can be taught. Ethics cannot. People at the top look for those who won't panic under pressure, won't betray values for quick gain, and won't create long-term problems for short-term success. Your choices proved you could be trusted with responsibility, influence, and access. You also learned that integrity isn't about perfection. It's about accountability. When mistakes happened, you owned them. You didn't shift blame or make excuses. That honesty made people feel safe working with you. It showed maturity. It showed leadership. The hardest part was choosing integrity when it felt like no one was rewarding it. But integrity compounds, slowly, quietly. And one day, you realize that doors are opening not because you asked, but because people trust you. That's when interest turns into respect, and respect lasts longer than any shortcut ever could. Your mindset outgrew your environment. There came a moment when you realized you were no longer growing in the same places that once felt comfortable. It wasn't sudden or dramatic. It was quiet. Conversations that used to hold your attention started feeling repetitive. The same complaints, the same gossip, the same arguments going in circles. You didn't judge anyone. You just felt a shift inside yourself. Your mind had moved ahead, and your environment hadn't. You didn't become arrogant or distant on purpose. You simply became more intentional with your energy. You started choosing silence over pointless debates, peace over proving a point, growth over familiarity. While others were stuck reliving the same stories, you were thinking about direction, stability, and long-term outcomes. That change made you feel slightly out of place, but also more aligned with yourself. Drama began to feel heavy instead of entertaining. You noticed how much time gets wasted reacting to things that don't matter. So, you stepped back. Not because you thought you were better, but because you wanted better for your future. You became selective with conversations. You listened more than you spoke. And when you did speak, it was with purpose, not emotion. This shift can feel lonely at first. When your mindset changes, old environments can start to feel tight. You may have felt misunderstood or labeled as different. But growth often creates distance before it creates connection. You weren't rejecting people. You were responding to an inner call to evolve. What you didn't realize is that this kind of internal change sends a signal. People who operate at higher levels recognize it. They notice who no longer gets pulled into small thinking, who doesn't react to every distraction, who values progress over popularity. That awareness doesn't need explanation. It's felt. Outgrowing your environment doesn't mean burning bridges. It means building new ones that match where you're headed. You began to seek depth, clarity, and direction. You wanted conversations that sharpened you, not drained you. That desire is often the first sign that someone is ready for a bigger table. And here's the truth. This shift doesn't go unnoticed. When your standards rise, access changes. The right people start paying attention because you're operating on a different frequency. You didn't change to impress anyone. You changed because you were growing, and growth always creates new space. You remained grounded as things changed. As things slowly started to change in your life, you didn't let it rush to your head. New opportunities appeared. Conversations shifted. People who once overlooked you began paying attention. For many, this is the moment when ego takes over. But you chose a different response. You stayed calm. You watched more than you spoke. You didn't feel the need to announce your progress or prove your worth. That restraint said more than any celebration ever could. You understood that momentum can be dangerous if it isn't handled with awareness. When things move fast, emotions tend to rise. Excitement, fear, pride, anxiety, all at once. Instead of letting those emotions drive your actions, you stayed grounded. You took things step by step. You asked questions before making decisions. You didn't let one open door convince you that every door was meant for you. Remaining grounded doesn't mean lacking ambition. It means staying connected to reality while moving forward. You remembered where you came from. You stayed respectful. You treated people the same way, regardless of their status or usefulness. That consistency in character built quiet credibility. People felt safe around you because you didn't become unpredictable when things improved. You also understood the value of patience during growth. Instead of rushing to make bold moves, you focused on learning the new landscape. You observed how systems work, how people operate, and where real influence lives. That observation phase is where many people fail. They act before they understand. You waited until your decisions were informed, not emotional. Emotional control is rare, especially when attention increases. Many crumble under pressure or chase validation when momentum builds. You didn't. You stayed balanced. You didn't overshare. You didn't overspend. You didn't overpromise. That stability made people take you seriously. It showed that your growth wasn't temporary. It was intentional. People who build and manage large systems understand one thing clearly. Chaos can't scale. Emotional reactions create instability. Ego creates risk. But clarity creates structure. When they looked at you, they saw someone who could handle responsibility without losing balance, someone who could grow without creating disorder. You didn't let change you. You let it refine you. And that grounded presence became one of your strongest assets as your world expanded. Your story makes people reflect on themselves. There's something about your journey that makes people pause, even when you say nothing at all. You don't have to explain yourself or tell your story out loud. Your presence alone brings up emotions in others. And the reason isn't jealousy or admiration by default. It's reflection. Your growth quietly asks questions that many people have avoided answering in their own lives. When people see how far you've come, they're often reminded of the moments they chose comfort over courage. They remember ideas they never started, chances they talked themselves out of, and habits they knew they should change but didn't. Your progress becomes a reminder, not of what they lack, but of what they postponed. That's why reactions can be so mixed. Some people feel inspired. They see you and think, if they can do it, maybe I still can too. Your journey gives them hope. It shows them that change is possible without perfection. These are the ones who listen, learn, and quietly cheer for you, even if they don't always say it out loud. Others feel uneasy, and that discomfort has nothing to do with you personally. It comes from comparison they didn't ask for but can't avoid. Your discipline highlights their inconsistency. Your growth highlights their stagnation, not because you're judging them, but because growth naturally contrasts with stillness, and not everyone is ready to face that. What's important is that you didn't set out to be a mirror. You didn't try to make anyone feel small or exposed. You simply committed to your own path. You focused on becoming better, clearer, and more aligned with who you are meant to be. The reflection happened on its own. People often misunderstand this dynamic. They think the reactions they get mean they should shrink or explain themselves. But the truth is, you are not responsible for how others process their own reflections. Your only responsibility was to honor your growth, and you did that quietly. Being a mirror isn't about standing above others. It's about standing honestly in your truth. And honesty has a way of revealing things without saying a word. Your journey became powerful not because it was loud, but because it was real. The reactions around you are proof that your growth is genuine. You didn't become a mirror by trying. You became one by becoming. This contact is a test, not just an opportunity. When new people start reaching out to you, it's easy to assume it means success has arrived. Messages feel exciting. Interest feels validating. Doors opening can feel like a reward for everything you've endured. But this phase isn't just about opportunity, it's about discernment. Not every hand extended toward you is meant to walk with you. Some are simply observing how you respond when the spotlight shifts. At this level, attention itself becomes a test. People watch how quickly you trust, how easily you get impressed, and whether you can tell the difference between genuine alignment and surface-level interest. Some connections are curious, not committed. Others want access, not partnership. That doesn't make them bad. It just means you need to be aware. This is where rushing becomes risky. When momentum builds, there's pressure to say yes quickly, to prove you're ready, to seize every chance. But growth doesn't require speed. It requires clarity. You've already learned how damaging the wrong alignment can be. This stage is asking you to slow down and listen, not just to words, but to patterns. Some people will test your boundaries subtly. They may push for favors, rush timelines, or expect access before trust is built. How you handle those moments matters. Saying no without guilt, asking questions without fear, taking time without apology. These responses reveal your maturity more than any achievement ever could. This phase also tests whether you still honor your values when options expand. Earlier, integrity protected you when choices were limited. Now, it must protect you when choices multiply. Success doesn't remove risk. It changes its form. The risk now isn't failure, it's misalignment. Choosing wisely doesn't mean closing yourself off. It means being intentional. It means allowing relationships to unfold naturally instead of forcing outcomes. True alignment feels steady, not rushed. It respects your pace, your standards, and your boundaries. This season isn't asking you to prove anything. It's asking you to protect what you've built. The right opportunities won't pressure you. They'll recognize you. And the right people won't rush you. They'll respect you. Remember, not every contact is a destination. Some are simply checkpoints, placed to see if you're ready for what comes next. This isn't hype, this isn't coincidence, and this isn't about proving anything to anyone. You're entering a season where your decisions carry more weight, your presence carries more influence, and your silence speaks louder than words. Stay aware, stay grounded, and remember, what's reaching for you now is responding to who you've already become.